Blade is a superhero movie starring Wesley Snipes. Blade has the powers of a vampire without the weaknesses of a vampire. He uses his special ability to fight against Deacon Frost, who wants to eradicate the human race to make way for vampires. The film was directed by Stephen Norrington and co-stars Stephen Dorff and Kristofferson. Howdy folks, welcome back to Garage Vampire-thon, where every day for the month of October we revisit a vampire movie. Today we're talking about Blade, which I kind of have a lot to say about this movie, surprisingly enough. I had seen this movie way back in the past, probably around the time Iron Man came out. That was kind of my introduction to Marvel movies, and I watched Blade, and I kind of like the aesthetic of those old Marvel movies. That kind of weird CG-filled gothic-y look. I'm especially talking about the movie Daredevil with Ben Affleck, which still to this day I'll defend. I think that movie's kind of underrated. This is what some people will call the first Marvel movie. It's up for debate. A lot of people are going to give that award to X-Men or Blade, or there's like prior Marvel movies. There was a shitty Captain America movie that was done way back when. So there's some debate over what movie created the modern trend of superhero movies. I would say Blade is partially responsible, if not the movie responsible, for this comic book movie boom that we're seeing right now. This movie wasn't big by any means. It's an R-rated action flick, which in retrospect, you're like, what, a Marvel movie that's R-rated? I feel like nowadays we're struggling so hard to make a Marvel movie that's R-rated. When Disney bought Fox, there's a lot of people speculating that Deadpool was going to become PG-13. Meanwhile, back in the 2000, Blade was coming out and it was, yep, R-rated, whatever. Blood and titties. The movie opens with a man getting head from a lady vampire. And then a rave happens where blood sprinkles on dancers and people are getting soaked up by the blood. Right off the bat, this is to say this isn't your average superhero comic book flick. What really struck my eye early on in this movie was its aesthetic. It has an aesthetic that I really dislike in movies. There's some elements of the aesthetic that I like I said, that early comic book feel is sometimes charming to me. But I hate that Matrix ripoff feel, where everything is just cranked blue, like the color corrector was like, alright, let's crank up the blue dial, and it just looks very sickly. It gives me like a Resident Evil or Cube feel. Then there's like the outfits where it's like, okay, leather outfits, skimpy clothing, it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. It really feels like Underworld, Resident Evil, Cube, those kinds of movies where you're just like, oh, I kind of hate that look. It just looks very outdated. That said, you forget quickly about the look because you're so drawn by Wesley Snipes' performance. Wesley Snipes is a charming motherfucker. And fuck! I wish he makes a comeback. I say this every time I mention his name in a video. But damn, I'm waiting for the Wesley Snipes comeback. Sure, he's a dick. He evaded taxes. That's a no-go. He owes the government a lot of money. But I think it was about time we let Wesley Snipes back into our households. Wouldn't you say, guys? Come on. Have another little Wesley Snipes. Let's make another Demolition Man. Come on. Demolition Man 2? There's so much you can do with a Demolition Man in 2022. With this kind of super sensitive culture going on. I want to see it happen. But he's great in this movie. And quite frankly, he carries the movie on his fucking back. This is a highly flawed movie that really doesn't stand the test of time, in my opinion. But if there's one reason to watch it, is for Wesley Snipes.
Freeze! Motherfucker, are you out of your damn mind?
He kind of plays this vampire, but like I said, he's kind of like half human, half vampire. and he takes this drug to make himself more human and not fully become vampire. But he's a really cool, suave character. He's very street smart. He knows his shit. He's got connections all around the city. And that's kind of what I like about this movie, too, is the world building they do. This villain is trying to create a race war between humans and vampires, kind of create a human-vampire helter-skelter. And I like the whole concept that some vampires are just drug trafficking blood. They put blood in ice and they try moving it around in trucks and getting it to people. Creates this really cool, seedy underbelly vibe to the film. That said, the movie is very flawed and outdated. And I saw Blade 2. I never watched Blade 3 because I hear it's awful. But I can't remember if Blade 2 is any better. But this movie is just so fucking convoluted. The action is very outdated. The hand-to-hand combat still stands out. Like, that works there. What I'm talking about are, like, scenes where they heavily rely on CGI. That's pretty outdated. And there's especially, like, a car chase scene in this movie where they just speed up the footage. I thought I was watching Nosferatu, the old undercrank technique. No, they're going for the fast motion thing, and it really is not a good look. Another scene in particular here is like a scene in a subway station. Just looks very shitty.
Oh my god!
Kind of reminded me of the first Mission Impossible movie. And this movie really could have used a better antagonist. This Frost guy just wasn't cutting it for me. Here's the thing with comic book movies that I never understood. These comic books have so many great villains, so many flashy characters. I feel like being a villain in a comic book movie, I'm not an actor, but if someone said, Paul, what role would you want? I'd be like, I want to be a villain in a superhero movie. That sounds like the funnest time ever. You're just chewing up the scenery and just being an ass, and it's like, it's so much fun. Yet somehow superhero movies tend to fuck up the villains every single time. Sure, you get the eventual Thanos or Joker. There's like the exceptions here and there, but for the most part, why do comic book movies struggle with their villains so much? It's always baffled me. But yeah, villain in here is pretty one-dimensional, not really cool. What's funny too is that Steven Dorff is very vocal on Twitter about how he thinks that the Blade remake that Disney is making is gonna suck, which I do agree with him, but at the same time I'm like, bruh, you're the villain of the first Blade movie. Be humble, sir. Humble yourself, sir. Show a little humility, sir. Which brings me to something that was constantly festering in the back of my mind while watching this movie. How the fuck is this gonna be PG-13? Like I said, the most iconic scene in this movie is the blood rave sequence. You can't do that in a PG-13 movie. So, alright. No sex, so the oral sex scene, that's out of line. Smoking, there's a lot of smoking in this movie. Kristofferson's character smokes a lot. You're not allowed that in this movie. Blade has tattoos around his head. I doubt Disney is gonna go for that. Scratch that. And all of those things I'm talking about, yes, I do like my movies bloody and sexy and gory and all that stuff, but it just creates this very bleak universe, which was the one thing I did think was interesting about this movie, despite me finding it very dated. You take those elements away, and all you're left with is a cool main character and a convoluted story and a subpar villain. So how do you make a Blade movie PG-13? I just don't think it works. He's a vampire slayer. You're gonna take the slaying out of vampire slaying? Doesn't really sound all that interesting to me. I don't know. I'm a little confused as to how Disney is gonna make this movie. I think Mahershala Ali is a great pick for Blade, but I do think that they should have just brought back Wesley Snipes for a Blade 4. Maybe not even call it Blade 4, just have Wesley Snipes come back and give him a reason for aging. He's half human, so he aged a little, I don't know. Yeah, it just feels really off to me that this is the movie they're gonna go with. Like this, Ghost Rider, all of those darker Marvel characters, they deserve R-rated movies. I don't think Blade works PG-13, and even if I think the way to do it is you make it more horror, go with more atmosphere, have it take place maybe in Transylvania perhaps, I don't know. Just have that more gothic-y feel. But even then, it's just like, don't compromise. Like, I don't know. I don't see any reason in watching a PG-13 Blade movie. Here's what I would do. Disney, here's my idea. I know you guys are struggling with a screenplay. You just fired everyone and pushed back the release date for this movie. I have suggestions for you. Take out your notepads. I'm giving you these for free. Come on, Disney. Blade fights fucking Dracula. Everyone would piss, shit, and jizz their pants if they found out that Dracula was part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Let's fucking do it. Just have Blade go up against Dracula. Maybe take a page out of the original Dracula movies. Have it so that Dracula is living in his castle in Transylvania and people are transporting him into his coffin to live in Brooklyn. And meanwhile, Blade is like getting the city ready for action. I don't know. Just get creative with it. That's my idea. I've never read a Blade comic book in my life. Fuck off. Alright, guys. Do you remember the original Blade movie? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Comment below, let me know, and I'll see you guys around tomorrow for more Garage Vampire-thon.
Blade.